Blind date at a cafe. The girl couldn't afford the bill, but the CEO millionaire said, "It's on me." Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The morning sunlight spilled through the windows of a small cafe in downtown Seattle. The scent of roasted coffee beans hung in the air, mingling with the low hum of chatter and the soft clink of ceramic cups. Every table seemed to hold a story, friends laughing, couples whispering, strangers scrolling through their phones. But at one table by the window, a young woman sat frozen in hesitation, clutching her phone like a lifeline. Her name was Ella Nguyen. Her dress was second-hand, carefully pressed but showing faint threads at the seams. Her worn shoes had survived one too many shifts at the diner where she worked nights. Her palms were slightly trembling, not from the cold, but from nerves. She whispered to herself, "Table 5, table 5, then glanced around, hoping to spot the man her best friend had set her up with. At the far corner sat a man in a charcoal gray suit, dark hair neatly combed, his attention fixed on his phone. He looked confident, calm, entirely out of place in the cozy cafe. Ella took a deep breath. That must be him. She gathered what courage she had left, walked toward him, and smiled. "Hi, you must be Kevin. I am Ella. It is so nice to finally meet you." The man looked up, startled. His name was Liam Hart, not Kevin. He was the chief executive officer of a major technology company. But this morning, he was simply waiting for his assistant to bring a contract. For a split second, he considered correcting her mistake. But something in Ella's earnest smile stopped him. Her eyes carried both exhaustion and warmth, the kind that felt real in a world filled with masks. So instead, he smiled faintly and replied, "Right. It is good to meet you too, Ella." Relieved, she sat down, placing her small purse on her lap. "I hope I am not too early. Blind dates always make me a little anxious," she said, nervously stirring the coffee she had not ordered yet. "They are something else?" Liam replied, amused by her openness. Ella laughed softly. "My friend Jenny says I talk too much when I am nervous, but I guess that is better than awkward silence." He nodded. "I do not mind. It makes it easier to get to know you." Her shoulders relaxed a little. "I work as a waitress at a diner near the station," she said quickly. "It is not glamorous, but it pays most of the bills. And you? What do you do?" "I work in technology," Liam said vaguely, his voice calm. Her face lit up. "That sounds smart. Coding, apps, things like that? I am hopeless with computers." "Something like that," he said, smiling. For the next few minutes, their conversation flowed like a gentle stream. Ella spoke about her art, how she dreamed of opening a small gallery someday. Liam listened, genuinely intrigued. It had been a long time since someone talked to him without expecting anything in return. Then, as the waiter placed the bill on the table, Ella reached for her purse and froze. The total stared back at her, cruel and undeniable. She had miscalculated. Her paycheck was not due until Friday. A flush crept up her neck as she fumbled through her bag, realizing she was short by several dollars. "I am so sorry," she whispered, mortified. I might have to put one of these back." Liam's expression softened immediately. He reached for the check, his tone gentle but firm. "It is on me." Her eyes widened. "No, I cannot let you." "You can," he said simply. "You showed up. That is worth more than a cup of coffee." For a moment, the noise of the cafe faded. The warmth in his voice, the ease in his smile, it all felt disarming. She thanked him quietly, cheeks burning with embarrassment, but also something else she could not name. As she stood to leave, she said, "Thank you again, Kevin." Liam chuckled softly, replying, "Any time, Ella." When the doorbell chimed behind her, he found himself staring at the empty chair across from him, wondering why a stranger's sincerity had left such a lasting impression. Outside, Ella walked toward the bus stop, clutching her sketchbook to her chest. She told herself it was just a misunderstanding, just a small moment she would soon forget. But deep down, she knew something about that meeting would change everything. The next morning, the rain had not stopped. A thin gray mist clung to the streets of Seattle, turning the city into a watercolor of silver and blue. Ella stood by the window of her tiny apartment, holding a steaming cup of instant coffee between her hands. The warmth did not reach her fingers. Rent was due in 2 days. Her manager had cut her shifts again, and her bank account balance would barely cover groceries. Her roommate, Jenny, leaned against the doorway with a knowing smirk. "You are thinking about him again, are you not?" Ella groaned, setting down the cup. "No, I am thinking about how to pay the electric bill." "Oh, uh-huh," Jenny teased. "The mysterious coffee man who picked up your check yesterday. The one you thought was Kevin. It was embarrassing, Jenny. I sat at the wrong table and talked to a stranger for half an hour. I could have died on the spot." Jenny laughed. "Well, maybe fate has better manners than you think." Ella rolled her eyes, but a small smile tugged at her lips. She remembered his voice, calm and patient. The way he said, "You showed up. That is worth more than a cup of coffee." It had not sounded like pity. It had sounded kind. But kindness did not pay rent. She slipped on her worn sneakers, grabbed her sketchbook, and hurried out the door. The cafe where she worked was 4 blocks away. The morning rush was already underway when she arrived, tying her apron as she stepped behind the counter. "Morning, Ella," called Mark, the manager, while stacking boxes of paper cups. "We have a meeting at 9 about next week's schedule." "Oh, do I still have all my shifts?" she asked quickly. He hesitated, avoiding her eyes. "We are cutting some hours, nothing personal. Business has been slow." Her stomach tightened, but she nodded. "I understand." For the next few hours, she poured lattes, cleared tables, and smiled through exhaustion. Each order blurred into the next 2 cappuccinos, 1 large mocha, 3 black coffees. Her hands moved automatically while her mind drifted elsewhere. Between customers, she pulled her sketchbook from beneath the counter. The pages were filled with pencil drawings, faces she had seen but never known. A woman reading by the window, a child clutching a balloon, a man laughing into his phone. Art was her refuge, a quiet world where life made sense. Sometimes she imagined owning a tiny art gallery, a place where anyone could walk in and feel seen. She would name it The Little Light. The dream felt foolish, but she clung to it anyway. Around lunchtime, a familiar sound caught her ear. The door chime. She looked up, and her breath caught. Liam Hart stood at the counter, dressed casually in a navy sweater, rain still glistening on his shoulders. He looked completely different without the tailored suit, more like someone who belonged here. He smiled when their eyes met. "Hello again," he said. "Kevin?" she blurted before realizing what she had said. Her cheeks turned crimson. Sorry, He chuckled softly. "Liam. My name is Liam." "Right, Liam. Welcome back." She fumbled for a cup. "What can I get you?" "Whatever you recommend," he said. She exhaled in relief, focusing on what she knew best. Steam rose as she crafted a latte, topping it with a small heart drawn in foam. When she placed it in front of him, he looked down and smiled. "That is impressive," he said. "Occupational hazard," she joked lightly. "We compete to see who can make the best art in milk. I would say you are winning." She laughed softly, then paused as she noticed something. He had tucked the receipt into his pocket instead of leaving it on the counter. A small, curious gesture, but meaningful. As he left, he turned back for a brief moment. "Keep drawing, Ella. It suits you." The words echoed in her mind long after he was gone. That night, back in her apartment, she flipped open her sketchbook and began a new page. The lines formed without hesitation. A man sitting by the cafe window, a faint smile in his eyes. Jenny peeked over her shoulder. "That looks like the mysterious coffee man again." Ella closed the book quickly. "It is just a study." But deep down, she knew it was more than that. It was the beginning of something she could not explain. Outside, the rain finally stopped. The clouds broke open, revealing a streak of pale sunlight across the rooftops. Ella stared out the window and whispered to herself, "Maybe fate really does have better manners than I think." In the quiet that followed, the sound of her pencil moving across the page became a promise to keep trying, to keep dreaming, and to believe that kindness, once found, might just come back again. A week later, Seattle carried the scent of fresh rain again. The sidewalks gleamed under the pale morning light, and Ella moved briskly between tables, refilling cups and greeting customers with her practiced smile. She had learned how to hide exhaustion behind warmth, but the strain still lingered in her eyes. Every night she worked overtime, sketching during her breaks just to keep her dream alive. That afternoon, the cafe door opened, and the small brass bell jingled a sound Ella had come to know by heart. She looked up and froze. Liam stood in line, holding a newspaper, the faint trace of a smile on his lips. His presence felt out of place in the crowd of commuters and students, but he seemed perfectly at ease. He caught her glance and nodded politely. "Looks busy today." Ella blinked, surprised that he remembered her. "Always is when it rains," she said with a nervous laugh. "People need caffeine and somewhere to hide from their problems." He chuckled. "And you are the one keeping them afloat." She shook her head, smiling as she handed a drink to another customer. "Barely. I just pour and smile. It is an art form of survival." "Then you are an artist twice over," he said, pointing to her sketchbook peeking from beneath the counter. "Still drawing?" She hesitated, half embarrassed. "A little. It helps me think." Liam's gaze softened. "You should not hide it. Art makes people remember who they are." For a moment, the hum of the cafe seemed to fade. Something about his tone carried weight, like he spoke from experience. She wondered what kind of man he really was. Before she could ask, Mark called her to the back for inventory duty, breaking the quiet connection. By the time she returned, Liam was gone. But in his place on the counter lay a folded napkin with a small note written in careful script. "Keep creating. The world needs it." She stared at it, her heart fluttering between surprise and confusion. Who leaves notes like that? And why did it matter so much that he believed in her? Later that evening, the cafe emptied. The air smelled of coffee grounds and rain-soaked jackets. Ella sat by the window sketching the empty tables, replaying every word he had said. It was foolish, she told herself. He was probably just being kind. Still, when the doorbell chimed again, her pulse jumped. Liam walked in, holding 2 cups of coffee. "I thought you might want one without having to make it yourself." She laughed, startled but touched. "You are officially my favorite customer now." They sat together at the corner booth, talking between quiet sips. The world outside blurred into a soft drizzle. Liam asked about her family, her art, the places she would visit if money were not a problem. She spoke about her mother's old paintings, long sold to pay bills, and her dream of opening the Little Light Gallery someday, a space filled with hope, not perfection. "You sound like someone who has already built it," he said gently. "I wish," she replied. "Dreams do not pay rent." "Maybe not," he said, "but they keep you from forgetting why you work so hard." The words stayed with her long after he left. That night, back in her apartment, she placed his napkin between the pages of her sketchbook like a bookmark of fate. The following days blurred into a routine. Liam visited the cafe, often sometimes for coffee, sometimes to read, sometimes just to talk. Ella started to look forward to those visits more than she wanted to admit. She told herself it was friendship, nothing more. Still, every time he smiled, her heartbeat betrayed her. One evening, as the sun set behind the city skyline, he lingered by the counter after closing. "You ever think about showing your drawings?" Ella looked up from the espresso machine. No one would come. "I would," he said simply. She laughed, shaking her head. "You say that like it would make a difference." "Maybe it would," he said, his tone thoughtful. "Sometimes all a person needs is one believer." When he left that night, the cafe felt emptier than usual. She locked up, stepped into the cool air, and began the walk home. Street lights glowed like scattered stars above puddles on the pavement. She clutched her sketchbook close, as if it held something fragile and precious, something beginning to grow. Behind her, in a nearby parked car, Liam sat watching her disappear down the block. He glanced at his phone, where an unread message blinked from his assistant. Reminder: Heart Vision Board Meeting, Thursday, 8 a.m. He sighed. In her world, he was just a kind stranger who liked coffee and art. In his world, he was a man built on deadlines, mergers, and headlines. For the first time in years, he preferred the world that did not know his name. The rain started again, soft and steady, as if urging both of them forward, 2 people from different worlds unknowingly sketching the same story, line by line, in the quiet rhythm of fate. 2 weeks passed, and the air in Seattle grew brighter, touched by the first hints of spring. The cafe was busier than ever, sunlight spilling across the wooden floor as Ella wiped tables between orders. Her days felt fuller now, but not because of work. Liam had become a quiet constant in her life. He came by often, sometimes for a coffee, sometimes with a story, sometimes just to sit by the window where she first mistook him for Kevin. He never acted like someone above her. He listened. He asked questions. And when she laughed, he looked at her as if that sound mattered more than anything else in the world. One Saturday morning, he surprised her with an idea. "You should take the afternoon off," he said. "There is a small art fair at Green Lake Park. You will love it." "I cannot afford to buy anything," she said, half joking. "Good," he replied. "Then you will not feel pressured to spend. You can just enjoy." "Oh," she hesitated, but something about his sincerity made her say yes. By noon, they were walking side by side beneath rows of white tents fluttering in the breeze. The smell of kettle corn and coffee drifted through the park. Artists displayed watercolor paintings, hand-thrown pottery, and delicate jewelry glinting in the light. Ella's eyes widened as she took it all in. "This is what I dream of," she said softly. "A space where people can see beauty without needing to be rich to touch it." Liam glanced at her, intrigued. "You mean a gallery?" "Yes. I even have a name for it. The Little Light Gallery." She smiled shyly. "It sounds silly when I say it out loud." "It sounds perfect," he said. "Every big dream starts as something small." They stopped at a booth where a young painter displayed sketches of cityscapes. Ella studied them carefully, her fingers tracing the pencil lines in the air. The artist noticed her interest and struck up a conversation. They talked about shading techniques and texture while Liam watched quietly, his admiration for her deepening with every word. When the painter asked if they were together, Liam's lips curved into a small smile. "Something like that," he said. Ella's cheeks flushed pink. She turned away, pretending to study another canvas. "You did not have to say that," she whispered later. "I did not mind saying it," he replied gently. The afternoon drifted by like a slow melody. They stopped for coffee at a lakeside stand, sitting on a bench overlooking the water. Ducks glided across the rippling surface as the sun lowered behind the trees. Ella opened her sketchbook and began to draw the scene, her pencil moving with quiet focus. Liam watched her in silence, memorizing the way the light touched her face. When she finished, she turned the sketch toward him. "You like it?" He nodded. "It is beautiful. You captured peace." She laughed. "Peace is rare these days." For me too," he admitted. "But right now, I feel it." A comfortable silence followed, the kind that only happens when two people stop pretending. As they walked back toward the city, Liam slipped his hands into his coat pockets, hiding the weight of a truth he could not yet share. She saw him as a kind stranger who understood her world. He knew that once his name and wealth came to light, everything might change. That night, Ella returned to her apartment with tired feet but a heart that refused to rest. She placed her newest sketch beside the note he had once written. "Keep creating. The world needs it." For the first time in a long while, she believed it might be true. And though she did not know it yet, every line she drew from this day forward would lead her closer to both the love and the heartbreak waiting on the other side of the truth. The following week arrived with the rhythm of city life returning to its usual rush. Yet for Ella, everything felt quietly changed. Every morning she looked forward to the soft ring of the cafe doorbell, wondering if he would walk in again. Sometimes he did, sometimes he did not, and on the days he did not, she caught herself glancing at the empty corner table, missing the calmness he brought with him. One Thursday afternoon, Liam showed up carrying 2 cups of coffee. "You always make it for everyone else," he said. "So I thought you deserved one made for you." She smiled as she took the cup. "You know, if you keep doing that, I will forget how to do my job." "That is fine," he said lightly. "You could find a new one, something closer to your dreams." She looked at him, uncertain whether he was joking. "Dreams are expensive." "Not all of them," he said quietly. That evening, he waited for her after work. The rain had stopped, leaving the city glowing under streetlights. "Walk with me?" he asked. They wandered through Pike Place Market after closing hours, the shops shuttered, the air smelling of salt and sea. Ella tucked her hands into her pockets as they strolled past empty stalls. The only sounds were their footsteps and the distant cry of a gull. "Tell me something you have never told anyone," he said. She hesitated, then spoke softly. "When my mother was sick, I promised her that I would never stop drawing. She said art was how we stay alive, even when life gets small. I think about that every time I want to quit." Liam's expression softened. "You kept your promise." "I try to," she said. "But sometimes trying does not feel like enough." "It is," he said firmly. "Trying is always enough." They stopped near a railing overlooking the dark water. The wind lifted her hair, and for a fleeting moment, the distance between their worlds disappeared. Liam reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small envelope. "I want you to have this." "What is it?" "An invitation," he said, "to the annual charity gala hosted by Heart Vision Foundation. It supports young artists and education programs. I think you should come." Ella blinked, taken aback. "Me? I cannot go to something like that. I would not even have a dress." He smiled. "Then we will fix that. You belong there more than most of the people who will attend." She stared at the envelope, torn between excitement and disbelief. "Why are you doing this for me?" He met her gaze steadily. "Because I believe in you." Her breath caught. For a moment, she forgot about the noise of the city, the rain, and the ache of her empty wallet. All she felt was the weight of those words. That night, back in her apartment, she opened the envelope again and again, tracing the embossed letters with trembling fingers. It felt unreal. She stood in front of the mirror, whispering to herself. A charity gala. Jenny peeked out from her room, holding a towel over her hair. "Did someone just say gala? Do not tell me the mysterious coffee man asked you out again." "It is not like that," Ella said quickly, though her voice wavered. "He just wants me to see something." "Yeah," Jenny said with a teasing grin. "Like how good you will look in a dress." Ella threw a pillow at her, laughing. But when the laughter faded, she found herself staring at her sketchbook on the desk. Inside it was the napkin note, the sketches, the memories all pointing to a feeling she did not dare name. She closed the book gently and whispered, "Do not fall for someone you cannot have." Outside, the wind brushed against the windows, carrying the faint scent of rain and salt. In her chest, something both beautiful and frightening had begun to bloom. She did not know it yet, but the night of the gala would bring the truth into the light, and nothing in her world would ever be the same again. The night of the gala arrived with an air of nerves and disbelief. Ella stood in front of her mirror, her hands trembling as she adjusted the strap of a simple navy dress that Jenny had found at a thrift store. It was not designer or new, but it fit her perfectly. She had curled her hair for the first time in months, and borrowed a pair of silver earrings that caught the light whenever she turned her head. Jenny stood in the doorway, grinning. "You look like someone who belongs in a fairy tale." Ella laughed softly. "I look like someone about to trip over her own feet." "Same thing," Jenny teased. "Call me when you are famous." Outside, a sleek black car waited by the curb. Ella hesitated before stepping in, her heart thudding in disbelief. The driver greeted her kindly and offered her an umbrella. As the city lights passed by, she pressed her palms together to keep them from shaking. The venue was breathtaking, a grand hotel ballroom filled with chandeliers and soft music. Waiters in crisp uniforms glided between tables, and the scent of roses mixed with the faint sparkle of champagne. Ella had never been in a place like this. For a moment, she stood by the entrance, uncertain where to go. Then she saw him. Liam stood near the center of the room, dressed in a dark suit that fit him flawlessly. But this time, he was different. People surrounded him: executives, reporters, and photographers. His presence commanded the space effortlessly. Her breath caught. In that instant, she understood what she was seeing. A voice echoed through the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome tonight's guest of honor, Liam Hart, Chief Executive Officer of Heart Vision Technologies and founder of the Heart Vision Foundation." The applause was thunderous. Ella's heart seemed to stop. Liam, the kind stranger who drank coffee at her café, was the CEO she had only read about in headlines. She could not move. The world around her blurred into noise and light. Every word he had spoken, every smile, every moment, they all twisted into something unreal. When he caught sight of her across the room, his smile faltered. He saw the shock in her eyes. He started toward her, but she took a step back. "Ella, please," he said softly when he reached her. "I wanted to tell you. I just did not know how." Her voice shook. "You let me believe you were someone else." "I never lied," he said quietly. "I just did not tell the whole truth." "That is the same thing," she whispered, her eyes glistening. "You had a chance to be honest." "Doubly. Would you have talked to me if you had known?" he asked. She hesitated, unable to answer. Maybe she would not have. Maybe she would have walked away that very first day. "Ella," he said, his voice breaking the distance between them. "Everything I told you was real. Every word, every moment." But the music swelled, and the applause rose again as more guests approached him. She stepped back, her voice trembling. "This world of yours, it is not mine." "Ah!" He reached out, but she turned before he could touch her. Outside, the night air was cold against her flushed cheeks. She walked quickly past the glittering cars and elegant gowns, her heels clicking against the marble steps. When she reached the street, she lifted her dress slightly to run, not caring about the rain that had begun to fall. Behind her, through the glass doors, Liam stood motionless under the golden light, surrounded by everything he had built, and for the first time, it all felt empty. Ella did not look back. The rain washed away her tears, but not the ache that followed. In her chest, something fragile had cracked. The world she had begun to believe in was gone, replaced by the cold realization that sometimes kindness could hide behind power and truth could arrive too late. The rain did not stop that night. It poured down in heavy sheets as Ella ran through the quiet streets, her heels clutched in one hand, her dress clinging to her knees. The city lights blurred through the rain, turning everything into a shimmer of gold and gray. By the time she reached her apartment, she was soaked and trembling. Jenny opened the door, her face filled with alarm. "What happened? You look like you have seen a ghost." Ella dropped the invitation card on the table. The gold lettering had smudged from the rain. "He is a CEO, Jenny. Liam Hart. That is who he really is." Jenny blinked. "Wait, the Liam Hart? The technology billionaire?" Ella nodded, her voice breaking. "He stood on a stage tonight, smiling for cameras, while I stood there like an idiot. I thought he was just a kind stranger." Jenny frowned. "Did he lie to you?" "He never said who he was," Ella whispered. "He let me believe he was ordinary, and I trusted him." She sank onto the couch, her hands shaking. "Do you know what it feels like to realize someone was living two lives, and you were only part of the smaller one?" Jenny sat beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulder. "Ella, he probably had his reasons." "Reasons?" she said bitterly. "To test me? To see if the poor girl was worth his time?" Jenny shook her head. "You do not know that." But Ella did not answer. Her mind replayed every conversation, every laugh, every word that now sounded different under the weight of truth. The next morning, the internet was already filled with photos from the gala. Articles flashed headlines like Liam Hart's mystery guest stuns at charity event. Some even called her the unknown woman in blue. The attention was unwanted and cruel. At the cafe, customers whispered and pointed. Mark called her into the back office. "Ella, I am sorry, but we cannot have this kind of publicity. People are talking. It is not good for business." She stared at him, speechless. "You are firing me?" "I have to," he said softly. "I hope you understand." She left without a word. The sound of the bell over the cafe door felt final. That afternoon, she packed her sketchbook and a few clothes into a duffel bag. She needed to get away from the gossip, from the city, from him. Meanwhile, across town, Liam sat in his office overlooking the skyline. The same articles covered his desk. His assistant stood quietly nearby. "Do you want me to release a statement, sir?" "No," Liam said firmly. "Do nothing." He leaned back in his chair, staring at the rain streaking down the window. His phone lit up with calls he would not take, messages he would not answer. For the first time, his empire of meetings and headlines felt meaningless. He picked up the small drawing she had given him at the park, the sketch of the lake, soft pencil lines that captured sunlight he could not see now. On the back, she had written one line: "Art is how we stay alive, even when life gets small." He closed his eyes. "I should have told her," he whispered. That evening, Ella boarded a late-night bus heading north, away from the city lights. The rain drummed softly against the windows as she hugged her sketchbook to her chest. Her heart felt heavy, but beneath the ache was something steadier resolve. She whispered to herself, "Do not let this break you. Draw again. Start over." As the bus pulled away from Seattle, Liam stood alone on the rooftop of his office building, watching the same rainfall. Two people under the same storm, separated by truth, each holding on to the memory of what might have been, and the hope that someday, kindness could find its way back. 3 weeks passed. The spring rain gave way to softer skies, but for Ella, the world still felt gray. She had taken a temporary job at a small art supply shop in Bellingham, a quiet town by the coast. The pay was little, but the silence was what she needed. Every morning she opened the shop, arranged the paints and brushes, and tried to forget the life she had left behind. But forgetting was impossible. Every time she flipped through her sketchbook, she saw his face hidden in the lines. She had drawn him so many times without meaning to his eyes, his smile, the quiet way he had listened. Now each page felt like a reminder of what she had lost. One afternoon, her phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. She ignored it. Then it buzzed again. Finally, she answered. "Ella," a woman's voice said warmly. "This is Clara from the Heart Vision Foundation. We are hosting an art exhibition in Seattle this weekend, The Art of Hope. Your work has been selected for display. Congratulations." Ella froze. "I think there must be a mistake." "No mistake," Clara said. "A private donor submitted your sketches. The selection committee loved them." "Oh," her breath caught. "A donor? Who?" "I am not allowed to disclose that," the woman replied politely. "But please say you will attend. Your story has inspired everyone here." When the call ended, Ella sat in silence. Her hands trembled around her phone. She had not submitted anything. There was only one person who could have done it. That Saturday, she took the early bus back to Seattle. The city skyline appeared like a ghost on the horizon. The exhibition was held at a restored gallery near the waterfront. Large banners fluttered outside, reading "The Art of Hope," a celebration of everyday artists. When she stepped inside, she stopped in disbelief. The walls were lined with sketches, her sketches. The barista at the counter, the child with a balloon, the man reading by the window. Each drawing was beautifully framed and lit. At the center of the gallery, a small plaque read, "The Art of Ella Nguyen, curated by Heart Vision Foundation." Her eyes filled with tears. She walked slowly from piece to piece, her hand covering her mouth. Each drawing carried a fragment of her struggle, her joy, her belief that art mattered even when the world did not notice. Then she heard a voice behind her. "I hoped you would come." She turned. Liam stood there, not in a suit this time, but in a simple shirt and coat. There were dark circles under his eyes, but his expression was calm. "Why did you do this?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Because I owed you the truth and a chance," he said. "You showed me what honesty looks like. I wanted to show you what belief looks like." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "You cannot fix everything with money, Liam." "I know," he said softly. "This is not about money. It is about saying sorry, the only way I know how, by helping you stand where you belong." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The hum of quiet music filled the room, and the faint scent of fresh paint lingered in the air. She looked around at the walls covered with her art, then back at him. "You kept every drawing?" "I kept all of them," he said, "because they reminded me of who I was before I forgot." Her voice broke. "I do not know if I can trust you again." "I am not asking you to," he said gently. "I am asking for a chance to earn it." "No?" She stood there, heart torn between pain and something she did not dare name. Slowly, she nodded once. "One chance, Liam, that is all." A faint smile crossed his face, full of relief and something deeper. "That is all I need." As the lights dimmed and the applause for the exhibit began, Ella realized that for the first time since that night, her heart was no longer heavy. Somewhere between the rain and the truth, something had started to heal. 6 months later, Seattle was alive with the soft warmth of summer. The rain had given way to sunlight that spilled like gold across the skyline. Inside a bright gallery on First Avenue, people gathered for a new exhibition. On the glass door, written in clean white letters, were the words, "The Little Light Gallery Grand Opening." Ella stood near the entrance, wearing a simple white dress and a nervous smile. Her dream, once scribbled in the margins of a sketchbook, was finally real. Framed drawings lined the walls, each one telling stories of small kindnesses and ordinary people. There was no luxury, no fame, just art that felt alive. Jenny came rushing over, a glass of lemonade in one hand. "I told you this day would come," she said proudly. "You did it, Ella." Ella laughed softly. "We did it. You were the one who kept me from giving up." From across the room, Liam watched quietly. He had kept his promise to earn her trust, not demand it. For months, he had helped her build the gallery, but never once stepped into the spotlight. Every decision, every invitation, had her name on it. As the evening crowd arrived, he finally approached her. "Congratulations," he said gently. "It is even more beautiful than I imagined." Ella turned to him, her eyes reflecting both gratitude and calm. "I almost did not believe it was possible," she admitted. "But you reminded me that dreams do not need to be perfect. They just need to be real." Liam smiled. "Then it is my turn to thank you. You gave me something I could not buy a reason to care again." They stood side by side, watching guests admire her art. Near the center of the room, a small frame caught Ella's attention. It was not one of her new drawings. It was the first sketch she had ever made of him, the man at the café table, unaware that one mistake would change both their lives. Beneath it hung a silver plaque, engraved with 6 simple words. "The best mistake we ever made." She laughed softly. "You kept this?" He nodded. It felt right to end where it began. As music filled the room, he reached into his jacket and pulled out a small velvet box. Her breath caught. "Liam," she whispered. He opened it slowly. Inside was a ring, simple, elegant, glinting softly beneath the light. "I do not want to pretend to be anyone else again," he said. "I just want to be the man who stands beside you. Will you let me?" Tears welled in her eyes. The noise of the gallery seemed to fade until there was only the two of them, standing in the glow of everything they had built together. She nodded. "Yes, Liam, I will." The room erupted in gentle applause as he slipped the ring onto her finger. For the first time in a long while, she felt completely seen, not as a waitress, not as a mistake, but as the woman she had always been meant to become. Later that night, after the guests had gone, Ella stood outside beneath the twinkle of city lights. The air smelled of salt and summer flowers. Liam came to stand beside her, his hand finding hers. "Do you ever think about that first day?" he asked. "All the time," she said with a smile. "One wrong table, one right person." He laughed quietly. "It seems fate knew what it was doing after all." She leaned her head on his shoulder, her voice soft and full of peace. "Maybe mistakes are just miracles in disguise." And as the lights of the little light gallery glowed behind them, they knew their story had come full circle, born from misunderstanding, built on truth, and sealed by love that had learned to begin again.